What's good? It's your boy Fanon. I'm going to talk about this Errol Spence Jr. versus Carlos Ocampo. We know we're supposed to be fighting. I believe it's in it's in a couple months. And the fact that it went to purse bid. So, and the effects that something that Bob Arum did that will probably cost Carlos Ocampo about $160,000. And the IBF rules that are just in place that are, for me as a lawyer, man, God dog. It's just so many shenanigans goes on. But anyway, before I get into that and explain to you exactly what I'm talking about, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. And most importantly, hit the bell icon so that we can have good conversations in the live streams that we do. And we can talk about these type of subjects. And also I'll respond in the comment section as well. But, otherwise, leave your comments in the section. Like I said, like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. So on to the meat of it. All right. The short of it is this, and then I'll explain. Errol Spence Jr. has a mandatory defense ordered by the IBF. The IBF, of course, is the belt, the championship belt that is held by Errol Spence. And Errol Spence, he won the belt against Kell Brook to win the championship. And then he took a voluntary defense against Lamont Peterson, and that was in January. He beat Lamont Peterson, and now he's in a situation where he has to face a mandatory challenger. The mandatory challenger for Errol Spence Jr. is Carlos Ocampo. And since Carlos Ocampo is the mandatory, that fight, it means what it is, that Errol Spence has to defend his title against him. Now, a short synopsis of the rules is this. Once the IBF tells Errol Spence or another champion, we need you to defend your championship against the person we tell you to, you have 30 days, your promoter and you. So Errol Spence and he's a self-promoter, but for the sake of this, we'll say the Premier Boxing Champions, or Al Heyman as a negotiator, manager, whatever, whoever the promoter is that wants it, says they have 30 days to work with the promoter of Carlos Ocampo and come up with a deal. The specifics of the deal could be, the biggest portions of it are, when is the fight? How much do I get paid? When's the fight? And how much do I get paid? When is the fight? Where is the fight? And how much do I get paid? Right? That's the bulk of what you have to negotiate. Other things could be glove size, rehydration clauses. I don't think there's like a rematch type of thing in a mandatory, but whatever. All that other stuff. So, but if you can't do that within 30 days, if the two representative parties, the two parties, Ocampo's camp and Errol Spence Jr.'s camp, can't come to an agreement, then it goes to an auction where any promoter or anybody who can say that, who has the money and who says, look, I can make this fight happen, IBF. All right, that you let their camps work it out. They couldn't work it out. I want to bid. I bet that I can get this thing together. So the IBF says, great, you get a chance to bid. And they have rules around the bids. And they say, okay, we're going to auction it off. Whoever offers the highest money wins. So then once they get that money, for the champion gets the lion's share of the money. The challenger gets the short end of the money. Now, situations where it's not going to go to purse bid are situations where the challenger is the cash cow. If the challenger is the cash cow, then it's never going to go to a purse bid because the champion would get the vast majority of the purse bid, right? So you're going to wind up seeing most often, according to the rules, where purse bids happen when you have the cash cow's the champion and the cash cow's trying to negotiate and the challenger wants more money than they're getting in the initial negotiation. Usually money, right? Because the bid is around the money. The bid really isn't around the location and all that. It's around the money. So usually. So in this case, so for example, uh, Canelo Alvarez fighting Gennady Golovkin's belt, that's not going to go to a purse bid because Golden Boy is not going to give somebody the right for that fight and wind up paying 85% of the money to Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez gets 15. Because if Canelo Alvarez gets his regular $8 million or whatever, that would mean you'd have to pay Gennady Golovkin some astronomical amount of money. So first of all, that's not going to happen that way. This is a predictable purse bid because you have somebody who's going to negotiate for Errol Spence that's not going to want to give Carlos Campos a lot of money because Errol Spence Jr. made last fight, according to what was written, the bare minimum of the money. Maybe, back ends on stuff, merchandising and all that might have lifted it up, of $1.25 million. So if you're going to pay Errol Spence Jr. $1.25 million and you know what that's going to be, you're going to make an offer to the other guy that's less than what he would get at a purse bid. So if you go by forcing it to purse bid, Carlos Ocampo guarantees himself that he's going to make at least $187,000 by forcing it to purse bid. If he didn't go to purse bid, then he's going to make he will make whatever is offered to him, right? But if I'm negotiating for Errol Spence Jr., I'm going to offer him before the purse bid. I'm going to offer him 150,000, 100,000, 60,000, something like that, because he's probably not made half of that in a fight before, and he definitely wasn't going to get it for that fight that he was supposed to have with Ponomarev. So anyway, that's basically the structure of how purse bids work. So I knew this was going to go to purse bid. It has to go to a purse bid. But this is how Carlos Ocampo got screwed back in July. The purse bid is split based on the ranking. The purse bid split of the money changes depending on the ranking of the challenger. So, with the IBF, if the champion fight goes to a purse bid, whatever amount is bid, the champion gets 85% of that. If it's against the number 1 or number 2 contender, the champion gets 75%, the challenger gets 25%. If it's if it's anybody lower, the number 3, the number 4, the number 5, then the split is 85% for the champion and 15% for the challenger. As a result, and Carlos Ocampo is the number 3 rated guy in the IBF. Not the number 1, not the number 2. He's the number 3. So he missed the difference between being ranked number 1 and number 2. If Errol Spence Jr. is going to get his normal 1.25 million, then the purse bid has to be at least 1.4 million to pay him, because you have to pay that extra. You can only pay him against the number 2 75% of it, and if he's fighting the number 3, he's going to get 85% of it. So Carlos Ocampo, the difference is that Carlos Ocampo would have had, instead of at 1.4, it's a $1.4 million bid where Carlos Ocampo currently is, right? To get him 1.5. I mean, to get Errol Spence Jr. his 1.25 million, right? Which would be roughly 1.4 million, and he would get 187,000. That basically, in order for Errol Spence to get his 1.25 million against the number 2 contender, then the number 2 contender has to make 359,775 in order to get that money. So basically the purse bid goes up from 1.4 to basically like 1.5, like 1.5 and a half, 1.56, something like that, 1.56 million. It increases the purse bid by 1.56 million in order for Errol Spence to still get his 1.25 million. unless Errol Spence wants to take a pay cut. But all that is whatever because Carlos Ocampo is the number 3, and he loses. The difference between 85% and 75% is 10%. That's a good chunk of money, man. The difference between getting 25% and 15%, that's a big chunk of money. But why is he the number 2? Why is he the number 3 and not the number 2? Because of Bob Arum. The IBF had originally ordered a fight between Konstantin Ponomarev, and Carlos Ocampo to fight a title eliminator to become the mandatory for Errol Spence Jr., which I'm pretty sure would have made him either the number 1, definitely Carlos Ocampo, who's the number 3. If he wins the title eliminator, he's got to get a bump of 1 or 2 in the rankings. But the fight didn't happen. And why didn't the fight happen? Because of Bob Arum and Top Rank. Top Rank won the purse bid. And the purse bid for non-championship bouts it's 85%, it's 75%, 25%. And Top Rank won the purse bid for $30,000. To be specific, $30,150, which meant that Ponomarev would have got 25% of that. 25% of that is $7,537.50. So why would he take that fight? And the reason, so he pulls out, not an injury, just pulls out and says, I don't want to have it. So, and the reason that his co-promoter at the time, his co-promoter said that he pulled out was because Abel Sanchez wasn't going to be available to make it. And he really wanted Abel Sanchez to be in his corner. But Abel Sanchez, conveniently enough, was fighting on a Top Rank card the same weekend that the fight was supposed to be held on. Right? A Top Rank card. Abel Sanchez was on a fight card with Bob Arum's promotional team. Actually, getting paid by Abel Sanchez was busy getting paid by Top Rank the same week, the same weekend that Ponomarev would have had to fight for a purse bid that Bob Arum won. And he knows 7-3. See, this is why I talk about Bob Arum, man. And this is just a really good example to see it for people that believe what he says about what happened with Jorge Linares versus Golden Boy Promotions. In this smaller fight, Ponomarev versus Ocampo, Top Rank bid $30,000, knowing that one of the fighters had a trainer that ain't no way in the world he couldn't even afford his trainer for $7,000. Abel Sanchez ain't making $7,000 a fight. How in the world could Abel Sanchez have done that? So basically what he does is he bids on it and he wins it at $30,000. And then he doesn't have to pay the $30,000 in purses because he might have to have because a fighter pulls out and says they don't want to take the fight. He just pulls out. So the guy doesn't get his purse. There might be, I can check the IBF regulations to see whether or not there was some, unrefundable fee of like $5,000. Matter of fact, I think as I read through the rule, there might be like an unrefundable fee of $5,000 that actually is Rule 10 of the IBF championship guidelines. I'm pretty sure that it said that you have to pay like a $5,000 you have to pay a $5,000 fee. Yeah, you got to pay like a $5,000 fee, non-refundable. Yeah, each promoter present at the bid shall pay a non-refundable fee to the IBF or the USBA, $5,000 for the IBF bid and $1,000 for the USBA bid. So pretty much Bob Arum paid $5,000 to bid $30,000 that he never had to pay. And as a result, he earned the rights to the fight and to a fight at a price you knew Ocampo's not going to want to fight for $22,000. Maybe he'd be willing to fight for $22,000, but Carlos Ponomarev is not going to be willing to fight for free. because this is because Panama, because Ocampo's a good fighter. He's got to train. He's got to have an 8-week training camp. He's got to eat. He's got to pay his rent. He's got to pay his trainer. He's got to pay transportation to and from. That's what you call pricing somebody out and being lowballed and canceled it. So for $5,000, Bob Arum paid the IBF $5,000 to make the fight go away. That's what Bob Arum did. And Carlos Ocampo is now getting penalized because the fight didn't happen and he couldn't become the number 2 or the number 1 or the number 2 ranked IBF contender in the purse bid that's going to take place with Errol Spence Jr. And this isn't something that's just new, that's just isolated to the fight between Errol Spence Jr. at the welterweight division. It's so ironic that if you go up and down the rankings of the IBF, knowing they have this rule in place where if you have a purse bid with the champion, that the champion essentially gets a 10% salary boost in a purse bid if he doesn't fight somebody in the top 2. If he fights somebody between 3 and 5. And you can go right down to IBF champ and say that IBF, this rule, stands out like a sore thumb when you look at the other rankings of the other sanctioning bodies. I'm looking at the current rankings of the sanctioning bodies. The WBA, the WBO, and the WBA, the WBC, and the WBO have all of their rankings number 1 to 10 filled all the way from heavyweight to minimum weight. All the way from heavyweight all the way down to 105 pounds. All of their rankings are filled. All of them have number 1, number 2 to number 15 ranked fighters. But the IBF has only one weight class. Do they have the number 1 and number 2 positions filled? Only one out of all the weight classes do they have both filled. And that is at bantamweight. They have Sultan and Rashid Warren at number 1 and number 2 for the IBF. Every other weight class has at least one of the number 1 and 2 ranks open, and maybe, and oftentimes, 2. Minimum weight, they have 2. Light flyweight, they have 1. They have 2 for flyweight, 1 open on the flyweight. 1 and 2 are open on and bantamweight. Number 2 is open at featherweight. Number 2 is open on featherweight. Well, junior weight, then featherweight. Lightweight has both open. Junior lightweight has 2. Lightweight has 1, and it goes all the way up to the heavyweight champion. Number 1 is open for the IBF in the heavyweights. Number 1 is open for the IBF. I mean, it's just their ranking systems are absolutely bananas. So anytime that you're an IBF champion, if you don't have that title eliminator fought, you don't make the number 1 or 2, you get deducted. It's 10% cut off your pay. And like I said before, if I'm Carlos Ocampo going into negotiation, if I'm negotiating for Errol Spence Jr., I'm gonna take it to purse bid. Because why would I pay him more than I have to if I don't really want to fight him anyway? The only time I would ever just avoid a purse bid is if I was the mandatory and I was the cash cow on the mandatory, or if I was the promoter for a cash cow is the mandatory. So I want to make sure that I can get, that I can pay my fighter well enough to take the fight. So anyway, long story short, is this pretty predictable that Errol Spence Jr. was going to go to purse bid that this would go to purse bid, and it's reasonable for Ponomarev to do it? I don't think this is a situation where Ponomarev is trying to duck Errol Spence, at least from what I can see. However, if Top Rank hadn't taken Ponomarev, I'm sorry, I think if I said Ponomarev, I meant Ocampo. I don't think this is a situation where Ocampo is trying to get out of it. At least it doesn't seem. It might be just a situation where he's trying to force himself to at least get the minimum payment that is due to him, being the number 2. But I gotta say, man, that Top Rank and Bob Arum playing that game back on back with the Carlos Ocampo Panamara fight. I mean, it probably did good for them because they now have an undefeated Eastern European fighter who's ranked by the WBO, who can be in the mix for a Terrence Crawford fight or a Jeff Horn fight or a Terrence or a Manny Pacquiao fight or whoever, somebody to offer somebody to fight on an undercard, that crappy undercards they be having over there on ESPN. But, just funny how the rules and regulation of boxing can wind up and really bite somebody. And at the very least, the IBF needs to be fair to guys like Carlos Ocampo and other mandatory challengers and fill their dang on rankings. Just move everybody up, man. Move them to number 1, number 2, change the rules in a way that might be necessary, might allow you to do it and still be fair. But as is, the fact that Panamara pulls out and Ocampo winds up getting penalized over $100,000, $160,000 is unfair. And with that, I'm out. Peace.